Early voting kicked off today, actually, in the state of Virginia for a special election that could have a huge impact on Congress. Through April 18th and on the day of the special election on April 21st, Virginia voters will weigh in on a proposed constitutional amendment that would allow the state legislature to radically redraw congressional maps. Now, if this passes, the amendment could potentially shift 4 Republican-held seats in Congress to Democratic seats. This means that the current 6-5, pretty even split of the 11 House seats in Virginia would suddenly be 10-1 in favor of Democrats. What would the impact of this be? Well, joining us now to discuss is Matt Carpenter, Director of FRC Action. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Casey. Great to be with you.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here because this seems pretty significant, right?
Yeah, this is significant. I think we're in like the final stage of this mid-decade redistricting war. We've already seen 6 states take up this redistricting, before the apportionment in 2030. And it's been tit for tat, but it seems like Virginia Democrats are inclined to put maybe a big win on the board for them going into the midterms.
Yeah, I mean, this is big indeed. This is not a marginal improvement. But the people spearheading this say that this redistricting effort, Matt, it's just going to restore fairness, is what they say. That's the quote. Restore fairness. I've seen the ads, actually, where I live, in Virginia's congressional representation. What's the truth here?
I think you have to be a pretty hardened leftist to believe that, frankly. The current redistricting situation in Virginia is done by a bipartisan redistricting committee, not linked to the governor, not linked to the legislature. It's split down the middle, 50-50, Democrat and Republican. And they have to adhere to certain, limitations on what districts they can draw. They have to be continuous. They have to be compact. They have to respect local jurisdictions. And instead, and that sounds pretty fair, I think, to most people. And if you're going to believe what the Virginia Democrats are saying, is that it would actually be more fair for the Democratic majority and the Democratic governor to undercut that bipartisan redistricting commission and instead draw hyper-partisan gerrymander districts across the state, turning a state, as you pointed out, that was 6-5, currently 6-5, to 10-1. So for a state that went for Kamala Harris by just 5 points in 2024, we have 46% of the electorate is ostensibly Republican, to end up with just 9% of the congressional delegation with 1 seat. That's a pretty partisan result.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of remarkable, and I know it's happening elsewhere, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, but I found it pretty interesting because the Democratic governor, newly elected, Abigail Spanberger, she had previously said she had no plans to redraw these lines if she won her election. I mean, during her campaign, she tried to sell herself to voters as really a moderate, but it doesn't really seem like that's how it's playing out. There's a third trimester abortion constitutional amendment. There's this redistricting. There's pretty aggressive gun laws and other things. But they're arguing that this redistricting effort is temporary. I've seen that language a lot, even in the ads that I'm bombarded with. They're saying it's a temporary measure, and it's only in response to what other states are trying to do. Are Americans being misled on this?
I certainly think so. The result of this is going to impact how Congress is shaped, the majorities of Congress. How temporary is that going to be? That Congress is going to make decisions that will impact Americans for the next generation. So I think that is incredibly misleading for them to say that. And just as misleading as you pointed out of Abigail Spanberger, who's only been governor for almost, I don't even think 2 months at this point, to campaign as a moderate and then to govern as a radical progressive. We seem to be having the Democratic Party playbook here, sort of a nice and tidy representation of that. Run as a centrist, govern as an extreme leftist. So that's something to keep an eye on for the midterms.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we really saw that with the former president, Biden, who governed very far to the left, and we have a whole onslaught of LGBT issues and inflation and many other things as a result of that. But I want to ask you about the legal action on this, because every time you read about one of these developments of redistricting, there's an immediate court challenge, and then that's got to work its way through, and there are various different states. So what can you tell us about where the courts have been on the redistricting issue?
Yeah, we just recently got a ruling out of the Virginia Supreme Court which put a block on the Tazewell County Circuit Court's ruling. They had issued a temporary restraining order preventing the ballot initiative from going forward. The Virginia Supreme Court stepped in, allowing the ballot initiative to go forward. As you pointed out, early voting has started now, so people are voting on this right now, thanks to that action from the Virginia Supreme Court. It's noteworthy that they have not ruled on the merits at this point. I'm not a lawyer, but the fact that they've allowed it to go forward to me suggests that the court is likely to rule with the Virginia Democrats once they look at it on its merits. But it remains to be seen. We can be praying. We can be hopeful. I will also note there was a recent poll out of Roanoke College, based in southwestern Virginia, Roanoke, Virginia, which showed that the initiative is actually failing with voters. 52% of Virginians oppose this ballot measure, just 44% support it. So there's a chance that it might not be the courts that have the final say, that it's actually voters. And that's a poetic end potentially for this radical redistricting effort.
Well, that would be very interesting to see. We've got about 30 seconds here. I just want to ask you how it all shakes out, because I know they've tried things in California and Texas, both red and blue states. Which party wins out after all this is over?
So up until this point, Casey, we've had 6 states engage in some kind of mid-decade redistricting. At this point, at this stage, Republicans have about a 2-seat advantage in the redistricting tit for tat. If the Democrats in Virginia succeed with this initiative, they will reverse those gains and give the Democrats a 2-seat edge going into the midterms. We got Florida and Maryland also waiting in the wings, potentially doing redistricting as well.
All right. Thank you, Matt Carpenter.